Sarah Martinez clocked in at 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes before her shift started at Metro General Hospital. She always arrived early, a habit she developed during her first week as a registered nurse 6 months ago. The other nurses on the emergency department floor had learned to expect her quiet presence, her methodical preparation, and her seemingly endless patience with difficult patients. At 24, Sarah looked even younger than her age. Her small frame and soft-spoken manner often led patients to ask if she was really qualified to handle their care. She would smile politely and show them her credentials, never taking offense. What they didn't know was that behind her gentle demeanor lay a mind trained in ways most civilian nurses never experienced. The morning started like any other. Sarah checked her assigned patients, reviewed their charts, and prepared medications with the same careful attention to detail that had kept her alive during her 4 years as a Navy SEAL medic. That part of her life felt like a different world now, one she rarely spoke about to her colleagues. "Sarah, we've got incoming," called Dr. Rodriguez from the nurses' station. "Multiple vehicle accident on Highway 95. ETA 5 minutes." Sarah nodded and moved into action. She had learned to compartmentalize her responses during her military service. While other nurses showed visible stress during major emergencies, Sarah remained calm and focused. Her colleagues attributed this to natural composure, not knowing that she had treated battlefield injuries under enemy fire in Afghanistan. The ambulance bay doors burst open as the first stretcher rolled in. A young construction worker, maybe 19 years old, lay unconscious with obvious head trauma. Blood covered his face and hard hat. Behind him, 2 more stretchers followed with additional victims from the 3-car collision. "What do we have?" Dr. Rodriguez asked the paramedic. "Construction truck rear-ended at a red light. Driver's unconscious, possible concussion. Second victim has chest pains, might be cardiac. Third one's walking wounded with lacerations." Sarah immediately assessed the unconscious patient while Dr. Rodriguez examined the potential cardiac case. The young man's pupils were unequal, indicating increased intracranial pressure. His breathing was shallow and irregular. These were signs Sarah had seen too many times during her deployments. Without being asked, she began preparing the equipment needed for an emergency procedure. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, laying out instruments and medications in precise order. Dr. Rodriguez noticed her preparation and nodded approvingly. "Good thinking, Sarah. We're going to need to relieve that pressure." What happened next surprised everyone in the room. When the patient suddenly went into respiratory distress, Sarah didn't wait for orders. She positioned herself at his airway and began a procedure that most nurses wouldn't attempt without direct physician supervision. Her movements were swift and, sure, her technique flawless. Dr. Rodriguez watched in amazement as Sarah successfully managed the patient's airway crisis. "Where did you learn to do that?" "Previous experience," Sarah replied simply, continuing her care without elaboration. The emergency continued for the next hour. More patients arrived as word spread about the accident. The department became chaotic, with families arriving to check on loved ones and reporters trying to get information about the crash. During the chaos, Sarah noticed something others missed. An elderly man who had been brought in with minor injuries from the accident was showing subtle signs of something more serious. His color was slightly off, and his breathing pattern had changed. These were indicators she had been trained to recognize in high-stress situations. She approached Dr. Rodriguez during a brief lull. "Doctor, I think you should look at Mr. Peterson again. Something's not right." He was cleared. "Just minor bruising." "I understand, but his respiratory rate has increased, and his skin color has changed." "Could be internal bleeding." Dr. Rodriguez trusted Sarah's clinical judgment. They had worked together for 6 months, and she had never been wrong about a patient assessment. When he examined Mr. Peterson again, he found exactly what Sarah had suspected. The man was bleeding internally and needed immediate surgery. "How did you catch that?" Dr. Rodriguez asked as they prepared Mr. Peterson for emergency transport. "Training," Sarah answered, but didn't elaborate further. Word of Sarah's exceptional performance during the emergency began to spread through the hospital. Nurses from other departments heard about the new girl in emergency who seemed to have unusual instincts for critical care. Some attributed it to natural talent. Others wondered if there was more to her background than she had revealed. Dr. Patricia Williams, the hospital's chief of emergency medicine, made a point to observe Sarah during her next few shifts. What she saw impressed her. Sarah had an unusual ability to remain calm under pressure, to anticipate medical needs, and to perform procedures with a level of skill that seemed beyond her apparent experience. "Sarah, can I speak with you privately?" Dr. Williams asked after a particularly busy evening shift. They sat in the small conference room adjacent to the emergency department. Dr. Williams reviewed Sarah's personnel file before speaking. "Your resume shows you went to nursing school after a period of military service. It lists you as a hospital corpsman, but it doesn't give much detail." Sarah remained quiet, unsure where the conversation was heading. "I've been practicing emergency medicine for 15 years, Dr. Williams continued. I've seen nurses with decades of experience who couldn't handle situations the way you did during that accident response. Your skills suggest training beyond what most corpsmen receive." "I received good training in the Navy," Sarah replied carefully. "I'm sure you did. But I'm wondering if you might be interested in additional responsibilities here. We're developing a new rapid response team for critical emergencies. I think you'd be a valuable addition." Sarah considered the offer. Part of her missed the intensity and purpose of her military service. Working as a regular floor nurse felt safe but sometimes unfulfilling after the high-stakes missions she had completed overseas. What would that involve? Advanced trauma response, working directly with physicians on the most critical cases, possible deployment to disaster sites. It would require additional certification, but the hospital would cover the training. The conversation was interrupted by the emergency alert system. Code Blue, Emergency Department. Code Blue, Emergency Department. Both women rushed to the main treatment area where they found a middle-aged man in cardiac arrest. He had been brought in by family members who said he collapsed while watching television at home. Sarah immediately began chest compressions while Dr. Williams prepared the defibrillator. The man's wife stood nearby, crying and asking if he would be okay. Family members crowded around the treatment area despite staff requests to give them space to work. During the resuscitation effort, something unusual happened. The patient's teenage son became agitated and started pushing toward the treatment table, demanding to know what was happening to his father. Security was called, but before they arrived, the young man broke free from his mother's grip and lunged toward the medical team. Without thinking, Sarah stepped away from the patient and intercepted the teenager with a movement that was both gentle and completely effective. She guided him away from the treatment area with techniques that clearly demonstrated training in controlling aggressive individuals without causing harm. "I need you to help your mother right now," she told the young man firmly but kindly. "The best thing you can do for your father is to let us work." Her tone and presence immediately calmed the situation. The teenager stepped back, and the family remained calm while the medical team continued their efforts. Dr. Williams watched this interaction while continuing to treat the patient. Sarah's response had been immediate, professional, and highly effective. Most nurses would have called for security and waited. Sarah had handled the situation herself with skills that suggested training far beyond what civilian nursing programs provided. The resuscitation was successful. The patient was stabilized and transported to the cardiac intensive care unit. His family thanked the medical team emotionally before following the transport upstairs. "That was impressive," Dr. Williams told Sarah as they cleaned up the treatment area. "Just part of the job." No, it wasn't. That kind of situational awareness and crisis management suggests specialized training. Military police? Security? Sarah finished organizing the emergency equipment before answering. Something like that. Dr. Williams decided not to press further for now, but her curiosity was definitely aroused. She had worked with many former military personnel over the years. Most were excellent healthcare providers, but Sarah displayed skills that suggested combat experience or specialized operations training. The shift ended at midnight. Sarah gathered her belongings and prepared to drive home to her small apartment 15 minutes from the hospital. As she walked to her car, she reflected on Dr. Williams' offer and questions. For 6 months, she had successfully maintained her cover as just another nurse. Her military service record had been carefully edited to show only her medical training, not her classified work as a SEAL medic. The transition to civilian life had been challenging, but she thought she was fitting in well. Now it seemed her training was showing through despite her efforts to blend in. The question was whether this was a good thing or a complication she needed to manage. Sarah had left military service for good reasons. 8 years of constant deployments, high-stress missions, and living with classified secrets had taken their toll. She wanted a normal life, a peaceful career helping people without the constant threat of combat. But, as she drove home through the quiet city streets, she couldn't deny that she missed certain aspects of her former life. The intensity, the sense of purpose, the knowledge that her skills could make the difference between life and death in critical situations. Working as a regular hospital nurse was fulfilling, but it didn't challenge her the way military medicine had. She was capable of much more than routine patient care, and, apparently, it was becoming obvious to observant colleagues. Her phone rang as she pulled into her apartment complex parking lot. The caller ID showed her former commanding officer, Captain Jennifer Hayes, now working at the Pentagon. "Martinez, how's civilian life treating you?" "It's good, Captain." "Quiet. That's what you wanted, right? Speaking of which, I got an interesting call today. Someone's been making inquiries about your background." Sarah's attention sharpened. "What kind of inquiries?" "Nothing threatening. Sounded like employment-related background checks. Someone wanted to verify your Navy service record. I told them what we agreed to tell civilian employers." This was concerning news. Sarah's transition from military to civilian life had involved carefully constructing a background story that would satisfy employer requirements without revealing her classified work. If someone was digging deeper into her history, it could complicate her efforts to maintain a low profile. Any indication who was asking? The request came through official channels, so probably legitimate employer verification. But, Martinez, be careful. Your skill set is valuable, and not everyone who might want to recruit you has good intentions. After ending the call, Sarah sat in her car for several minutes thinking about the day's events and this new information. Someone was investigating her background. Dr. Williams had offered her a position that would put her in more visible, high-responsibility situations. And, despite her efforts to blend in, her training was clearly showing through her work. She thought about the young construction worker from that morning's accident. Her quick action had probably saved his life. The elderly man with internal bleeding might have died if she hadn't caught the subtle signs others missed. The cardiac arrest patient had been successfully resuscitated with her help. This was why she had become a medic in the first place, to save lives. Whether in military or civilian settings, her training and experience gave her the ability to help people in ways that few others could. As she finally walked to her apartment, Sarah realized that trying to completely suppress her background might not be the right approach. Perhaps there was a way to use her skills in civilian healthcare without compromising her desire for a more peaceful life. The question was whether she could trust Dr. Williams and her colleagues with more of the truth about her background. And whether the mysterious inquiries about her history represented an opportunity or a threat she needed to prepare for. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and decisions. But tonight, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months: excitement about the possibilities her future might hold. 3 weeks after her conversation with Dr. Williams, Sarah found herself facing a situation that would change everything. It started as a routine Tuesday morning shift, but by noon, the entire hospital was dealing with a crisis that tested everyone's limits. The first indication something was wrong came over the emergency radio at 11:47 a.m. "Metro General, we have a school bus accident with multiple pediatric casualties. Estimated 15 injured children, ages 6 to 12. ETA 12 minutes. Dr. Williams immediately activated the hospital's mass casualty protocol. Staff from other departments were called to assist in the emergency room. Additional physicians were summoned from their rounds. The pediatric intensive care unit was placed on standby. Sarah had been checking on a patient with chest pains when the announcement came. She immediately began preparing treatment areas and gathering supplies. Her military training had included mass casualty scenarios, though she had never dealt with injured children in a combat zone. The first ambulances arrived carrying the most seriously injured children. A 7-year-old girl with a head injury. A 9-year-old boy with suspected internal bleeding. Twin sisters with multiple fractures. The sight of injured children affected even the most experienced staff members. Sarah was assigned to work with Dr. Martinez on the most critical cases. As they began treating the children, she noticed something that concerned her. Several staff members were showing signs of emotional distress that was affecting their performance. This was understandable but potentially dangerous. During her SEAL training, Sarah had learned that emotional control under extreme stress wasn't just personal discipline, it was a matter of life and death for everyone depending on your skills. She began quietly helping her colleagues maintain their focus while continuing to provide excellent patient care. The situation became more complicated when news crews arrived outside the hospital. Parents who had heard about the accident began flooding the emergency department, desperate for information about their children. The hospital's normal procedures were overwhelmed by the scale of the crisis. Sarah was working on stabilizing the 9-year-old boy when she heard a commotion from the waiting area. A father who couldn't find information about his daughter had become aggressive with the registration staff. Security was trying to calm the situation, but the man was becoming increasingly agitated. Without leaving her patient, Sarah called out to Dr. Williams. "Doctor, suggest we establish a family information center in the main conference room. Separate the families from treatment areas but give them regular updates and access to social services." Dr. Williams looked up from the patient she was treating. "That's excellent thinking. Can you coordinate that?" "I can set it up, but I think Dr. Patterson from Pediatrics should run it. Parents will respond better to someone with child psychology training." This suggestion demonstrated something Dr. Williams had been noticing about Sarah. She had an unusual ability to think strategically about complex situations while maintaining focus on immediate medical needs. This kind of multi-level thinking was rare and extremely valuable during emergencies. As the crisis continued, Sarah's performance became even more impressive. When one of the injured children went into shock, she anticipated the medical team's needs and had everything prepared before being asked. When a piece of critical equipment malfunctioned, she quickly improvised a solution using supplies from elsewhere in the hospital. Most notably, when a 10-year-old girl with severe facial injuries became hysterical and was fighting the medical team's attempts to help her, Sarah approached the situation differently than her colleagues. Instead of using restraints or trying to convince the child to cooperate, Sarah sat down next to the girl's stretcher and began speaking to her in a calm, steady voice. She didn't talk about medical procedures or try to explain what was happening. Instead, she asked the girl about her favorite color, her pet's name, what she wanted to be when she grew up. Within minutes, the child was calm and allowing the medical team to work. Dr. Martinez watched this interaction with amazement. He had been working with pediatric patients for 8 years and had never seen anyone establish that kind of rapport so quickly with a severely injured, frightened child. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked Sarah during a brief break in treatment. "Children respond to authenticity and calmness," Sarah replied. "If you're genuinely focused on them as people rather than just medical cases, they sense that." This was true, but it wasn't the complete explanation. Sarah's training had included psychological operations and working with traumatized civilians in war zones. She understood how fear affected people and how to help them function despite extreme stress. The crisis lasted for 6 hours. By evening, all the injured children had been treated and stabilized. Most were able to go home with their parents. 3 required overnight observation. 1, the 7-year-old with the head injury, needed surgery but was expected to make a full recovery. After the last patient was settled and the emergency department returned to normal operations, Dr. Williams called a debriefing meeting with the staff who had responded to the crisis. This was standard procedure, designed to help healthcare workers process traumatic events and identify lessons learned. During the meeting, multiple staff members mentioned Sarah's performance. The pediatric nurse who had worked with her said Sarah seemed to anticipate medical needs before they became obvious. The social worker praised her suggestion about the Family Information Center, which had prevented several potentially dangerous confrontations with desperate parents. Dr. Martinez described how Sarah had calmed the hysterical child when other approaches had failed. She has some kind of natural ability to connect with people under stress, he said. Dr. Williams listened to these comments while watching Sarah's reactions. The young nurse accepted the praise politely but seemed uncomfortable with the attention. She deflected credit to other team members and emphasized how well everyone had worked together. This response told Dr. Williams something important about Sarah's background. Military personnel, especially those with special operations training, were taught to minimize individual recognition and emphasize team performance. Combined with Sarah's obvious skills, this suggested her military service had involved more than routine medical duties. After the debriefing, Dr. Williams asked Sarah to stay behind for a private conversation. "That was exceptional work today," Dr. Williams began. "But I'm increasingly convinced that your background includes training and experience you haven't shared with us." Sarah had been expecting this conversation. Her performance during the bus accident had required her to use skills that clearly went beyond civilian nursing education. She had to decide how much truth to reveal. "My military service included some specialized training," she said carefully. "What kind of specialized training?" "Because what I observed today looked like combat medical experience, possibly special operations medicine." Sarah considered her options. She could continue to be evasive, but that would probably damage her relationship with Dr. Williams and limit her opportunities at the hospital. She could reveal part of the truth while protecting the classified aspects of her background. Or she could trust Dr. Williams with more complete information. "I served as a medic with special operations units," Sarah said finally. "I can't discuss specific missions or locations, but yes, I have experience with trauma medicine under high-stress conditions." Dr. Williams nodded. "That explains a lot. The question is, what do you want to do with those skills now?" "I wanted a quieter life. That's why I chose civilian nursing." "But, are you satisfied with routine patient care?" "Because from what I've observed, you're capable of much more." Sarah thought about the events of the day. Working on the bus accident had been stressful, but it had also been energizing in ways that routine nursing duties weren't. She had felt useful in a way she hadn't experienced since leaving military service. "What are you suggesting?" "I want to offer you a position with our new critical response team. It would involve advanced trauma training, disaster response, and working on the most challenging medical emergencies. You'd still be based here at Metro General, but you'd also be available for deployment to regional emergencies." The offer was attractive, but Sarah had concerns. What kind of background check would that require? Standard federal clearance for emergency responders. Nothing that would compromise your privacy about classified military service. This was reassuring, but Sarah knew that any position involving emergency deployment would put her in situations where her full skill set might become obvious. On the other hand, it would allow her to use her training in ways that could save lives while remaining in civilian service. "I need to think about it," Sarah said. "Of course. Take your time. But, Sarah, I want you to know that whatever your background includes, you're exactly the kind of person we need in emergency medicine." That evening, Sarah went home and called Captain Hayes to discuss the offer and its implications. "Sounds like an opportunity to use your skills without compromising your security," Hayes said after hearing the details. "Emergency medicine is a good cover for your abilities, and it keeps you in the medical field where you belong. But what if I'm deployed to situations where I have to do things that reveal my real background? Then, you deal with that when it happens. Martinez, you spent 8 years saving lives in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Now you have a chance to keep saving lives in a peaceful environment. Don't overthink it. Captain Hayes was right, but Sarah still had reservations. Her transition to civilian life had been carefully planned to avoid situations that might expose her identity or create security risks. Taking a high-profile position in emergency medicine would make her more visible. On the other hand, the bus accident had reminded her why she had become a medic in the first place. The technical skills were important, but what really mattered was being able to help people when they needed it most. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work to find an unusual situation developing. A construction accident at a downtown high-rise had trapped several workers, and the city's emergency response teams were requesting medical personnel who could work in dangerous conditions. Dr. Williams approached Sarah before she had even clocked in. "I know you haven't decided about the response team position yet, but we have an immediate situation. The fire department is asking for a medic who can rappel down to treat injured workers on a damaged building. Are you qualified for that kind of work?" Sarah looked at Dr. Williams for a moment before answering. The question revealed how much the department chief suspected about her background. Rappelling to treat casualties was definitely not standard nursing training. "Yes, I can do that," Sarah said. "Good. The helicopter leaves in 10 minutes. There's a full trauma kit waiting, and you'll be working with the fire department's technical rescue team." As Sarah gathered her equipment and prepared for deployment, she realized that her decision about the response team position had essentially been made for her. She was about to reveal capabilities that would make it impossible to maintain her low-profile approach to civilian healthcare. But, looking at the tactical situation briefing and thinking about the injured workers who needed help, Sarah found that she was excited rather than worried. For the first time since leaving military service, she was about to do exactly what she had been trained to do: save lives in a dangerous environment where few others could operate effectively. The helicopter lifted off from the hospital parking lot with Sarah aboard, carrying her toward a mission that would change how her colleagues saw her and how she saw her own future in civilian medicine. The helicopter circled the damaged construction site as Sarah studied the tactical situation below. A crane collapse had damaged 3 floors of the partially built office tower, trapping 5 workers on an unstable section of the 15th floor. Traditional rescue approaches were too dangerous because the damaged structure could collapse further at any moment. Fire Captain Mike Rodriguez briefed Sarah through the helicopter's communication system. "We need someone who can rappel down to the trapped workers, provide immediate medical care, and help coordinate their evacuation. The structural engineers say we have maybe an hour before the whole section could come down." Sarah assessed the situation with eyes trained by years of combat operations. Wind conditions, structural damage, evacuation routes, potential complications. This was exactly the kind of high-risk medical mission she had performed dozens of times in Afghanistan and other deployment zones. "What's the medical status of the trapped workers?" she asked. "Unknown. We can see them moving, but we can't get close enough for assessment. That's why we need you down there." Sarah checked her equipment one final time. The trauma kit contained everything she might need for field treatment. Her rappelling gear was professional quality, though different from the military equipment she was accustomed to using. Most importantly, she felt the familiar calm focus that had kept her alive during dangerous missions. "I'm ready," she told Captain Rodriguez. The descent to the 15th floor required navigating around twisted steel beams and broken concrete. Sarah moved with confidence that surprised the fire department's technical rescue specialists. Most civilian medical personnel needed extensive coaching for this kind of operation. Sarah performed like someone with years of tactical rope work experience. She reached the trapped workers and immediately began triage assessment. 2 men with minor injuries who could be evacuated immediately. 1 woman with a possible spinal injury who would need careful immobilization. 1 man with severe leg trauma that required immediate attention to prevent him from bleeding out. And 1 unconscious worker with unknown injuries. Sarah established radio contact with Captain Rodriguez and Dr. Williams, who was monitoring from the hospital. "I have 5 patients. 2 ambulatory, 1 possible spinal, 1 severe leg trauma with arterial bleeding, 1 unconscious with unknown injuries. I need evacuation in order of medical priority, not rescue convenience. This kind of clear, tactical medical assessment impressed both the fire department and hospital personnel listening to the radio traffic. Sarah was thinking like a combat medic, not a civilian nurse. Working on the unstable platform 15 stories above the ground, Sarah began treating the most critically injured worker. The man's leg had been crushed by fallen debris, and he was losing blood rapidly. Standard civilian medical protocol would call for immediate evacuation, but Sarah knew that moving him without stopping the bleeding would kill him. She applied a tourniquet with practiced efficiency, then began preparing the patient for what was essentially battlefield surgery. Using techniques learned in forward operating bases, Sarah stopped the bleeding and stabilized the injured leg well enough for the man to survive evacuation. "Control, this is Martinez," she radioed. "Critical patient is stabilized for transport. Ready for basket evacuation." Captain Rodriguez watched Sarah's work through binoculars from the command post. Her movements were precise and confident. She seemed completely comfortable working in dangerous conditions. This definitely wasn't standard nursing training. "Martinez, where did you learn to work like that?" he asked over the radio. "Previous experience," Sarah replied, focusing on preparing the spinal injury patient for evacuation. The evacuation took 2 hours. Sarah remained on the unstable platform until all 5 workers had been safely removed. When she finally rappelled down to ground level, she was met by Dr. Williams and a group of impressed emergency responders. "Outstanding work," Dr. Williams said. "All 5 patients are stable, and the man with the leg injury is going to keep his leg because of your field treatment." Captain Rodriguez approached Sarah as she was cleaning her equipment. "I've been doing technical rescue for 12 years. I've worked with a lot of medical personnel in dangerous situations. You performed like someone with extensive tactical medicine training." "Military?" Sarah nodded. "Navy. What kind of Navy training teaches you to work like that?" Before Sarah could answer, her radio crackled with an emergency transmission. All units. We have reports of an active shooter situation at Riverside Elementary School. Multiple casualties reported. All available medical personnel respond immediately." Dr. Williams turned to Sarah. "The hospital is sending a medical team to establish field treatment. Are you available?" Sarah looked at the radio, thinking about children under fire and the medical team that would be trying to help them. This was exactly the kind of situation where her specialized training could save lives that might otherwise be lost. "Yes, I'm available." The drive to Riverside Elementary took 12 minutes. During the trip, Sarah listened to radio traffic between police units, emergency medical services, and the incident command post. The situation was chaotic. An armed individual had entered the school during lunch period. At least 6 children and 2 adults were reported injured. The shooter's location and status were unknown. When they arrived at the school, Sarah immediately recognized the tactical situation. Police had established a perimeter around the building. Parents were gathering behind barriers, desperate for information about their children. Ambulances were staged in a safe area, waiting for clearance to approach the building. Dr. Williams found the incident commander, Police Captain Lisa Anderson. "We're here to provide medical support." "What's the situation?" "Shooter is contained in the east wing of the building. We have officers evacuating students from other areas. We know there are injured people inside, but we can't reach them until the threat is neutralized." Sarah listened to this briefing while studying the school layout and tactical situation. Her combat experience told her that waiting for complete area clearance might cost lives if any of the injuries were severe. Children didn't have the same physiological reserves as adults when dealing with trauma. "Captain Anderson," Sarah said, "I can provide medical care in a non-secure environment if you have officers who can provide protection." Captain Anderson looked at Sarah with surprise. "That's not standard procedure for civilian medical personnel." "I have experience working in hostile environments," Sarah replied. Dr. Williams stared at Sarah. "What kind of experience?" Before Sarah could answer, a police sergeant approached the command post. "Captain, we've established contact with some of the injured people inside. We've got a teacher and 3 students trapped in a classroom. One of the kids is bleeding badly." Sarah stepped forward. "I can reach them if you can provide escort protection." Captain Anderson studied Sarah for a moment. "What's your background?" "Navy SEAL medic. 8 years of combat deployments." The revelation stunned everyone within hearing. Dr. Williams had suspected Sarah's military service involved specialized training, but this was far beyond what she had imagined. Navy SEALs were among the most elite military personnel in the world. Captain Anderson's attitude changed immediately. "Can you work with tactical teams in an active threat environment?" "Yes." "All right. Sergeant Morrison will brief you on our approach. But, understand, we can't guarantee your safety in there." "Understood." Sarah quickly prepared her medical equipment for tactical movement. She selected only essential supplies that wouldn't slow her down or compromise her ability to move through the building safely. This kind of gear selection was second nature after years of combat missions. Sergeant Morrison briefed her on the approach route and communication procedures. "We'll move as a 4-person team. 2 officers, you, and me. Our job is to reach the trapped civilians, provide immediate medical care, and coordinate evacuation." The team entered the school through a side entrance that had been cleared by the initial police response. The hallways were eerily quiet except for distant sounds of ongoing police operations. Sarah moved with the tactical team in ways that clearly demonstrated extensive training in building clearance and room-to-room movement. They reached the trapped classroom without incident. Inside, they found Ms. Jennifer Park, a 3rd-grade teacher, and 3 8-year-old students. One of the children, a little girl named Emma, had been hit by flying glass when windows broke. She was conscious but bleeding from multiple lacerations. Sarah immediately began treating Emma while maintaining awareness of the tactical situation around them. The little girl was frightened and crying for her mother. Sarah worked to calm her while stopping the bleeding and assessing her injuries. "Emma, my name is Sarah, and I'm here to help you," she said in a gentle voice. "You're going to be fine, but I need you to stay still while I take care of these cuts." The child responded to Sarah's calm presence and allowed her to clean and bandage the lacerations. Meanwhile, Sarah assessed the other children and Ms. Park for injuries. All were physically unharmed but emotionally traumatized. "Sergeant, we have 1 patient requiring hospital transport and 3 others who are uninjured but need evacuation," Sarah reported. The evacuation went smoothly. Within 20 minutes, all 4 civilians were safely removed from the building. The police tactical team continued their operations while Sarah accompanied Emma to the hospital for additional treatment. During the ambulance ride, Emma held Sarah's hand and asked, "Are you a soldier?" Sarah smiled. "I used to be. Now I'm a nurse." "Will you stay with me at the hospital?" "As long as you need me to." At the hospital, Emma's parents were waiting anxiously. When they saw their daughter being brought in, conscious and talking, they broke down in relief. Sarah briefed the emergency room physician on Emma's injuries and treatment, then prepared to return to the school to assist with any additional casualties. Dr. Williams stopped her before she could leave. "We need to talk." They found a quiet conference room where Dr. Williams closed the door and sat down across from Sarah. "Navy SEAL medic," Dr. Williams said. "Do you have any idea how extraordinary that is?" Sarah remained quiet, unsure how to respond. "There are fewer than 3,000 active duty SEALs in the entire Navy. The medical personnel who serve with them represent some of the most highly trained combat medics in the world. And you've been working here for 6 months as a regular floor nurse." "I wanted a normal life," Sarah explained. "I was tired of combat deployments and classified missions. I just wanted to help people in a peaceful environment. But you can't hide that level of training. What I saw today at the construction site and the school, that's not something you can pretend not to know how to do." Dr. Williams was right, and Sarah knew it. Her performance during the two emergency situations had revealed capabilities that couldn't be explained by routine military medical training. Her cover as an ordinary former Navy corpsman was no longer believable. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now we figure out how to use your skills appropriately. The hospital administration is going to want to know about your background. The police department will probably want to recruit you for their tactical medical team. And, I suspect federal agencies might be interested in your availability for special situations." This was exactly what Sarah had hoped to avoid. Her carefully planned transition to civilian life was about to become much more complicated. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed Captain Hayes from the Pentagon. "I need to take this," Sarah told Dr. Williams. "Martinez, I just got some interesting reports about activities in your area today," Captain Hayes said. "Something about a SEAL medic working with local emergency services?" "My cover is blown," Sarah admitted. "Maybe that's not a bad thing. I've been meaning to call you anyway. We've got a situation developing that could use your particular skill set." Sarah's heart sank. "Ma'am, I'm out of the Navy. I'm done with military service." "This isn't military, Martinez. It's a joint task force working on domestic emergency response. Think of it as using your SEAL training for homeland security instead of overseas operations." "What kind of situations?" "Disasters, terrorist threats, hostage situations involving medical emergencies. Times when regular emergency responders need someone with your unique combination of tactical and medical training." Sarah looked at Dr. Williams, who was waiting patiently for her to finish the call. The offer from Captain Hayes represented a return to the high-stakes world she had tried to leave behind. But, the events of the day had reminded her how much good she could do when she was allowed to use her full skill set. "I'll think about it," she told Captain Hayes. After ending the call, Sarah explained the conversation to Dr. Williams. "It sounds like you have some decisions to make," Dr. Williams said. "But, I want you to know that whatever you decide, you have a place here at Metro General. Today proved that we need someone with your capabilities." As Sarah drove home that evening, she reflected on how much had changed in a single day. Her secret was out. Her quiet civilian career was about to become much more complex. But, for the first time since leaving military service, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 6 months later, Sarah's life had changed completely. What started as a simple nursing job had evolved into something she never expected. She was now the lead medic for Metro General's Critical Response Team and a certified member of the Regional Emergency Response Task Force. Most significantly, she had become known throughout the emergency services community by a call sign that captured both her military background and her new role, Alpha SEAL Medic. The call sign had originated during a helicopter rescue mission 3 months earlier. Sarah had been deployed to assist with a tourist boat accident on Lake Harrison when weather conditions became too dangerous for normal helicopter operations. The Coast Guard pilot, struggling with high winds and limited visibility, had requested guidance from ground control about whether to continue the mission. "Control, this is Coast Guard Rescue 7, the pilot had radioed. Conditions are marginal for civilian rescue operations. Request guidance on mission continuation." Sarah, monitoring the radio frequency, recognized the pilot's dilemma. Weather conditions were indeed dangerous for routine operations, but her combat experience told her the mission was still feasible with proper tactical approach. She keyed her radio. "Rescue 7, this is Alpha SEAL Medic. Weather is manageable with modified approach vector. Recommend coming in from the northwest at reduced altitude. I can guide you to safe landing zone." The pilot's response revealed surprise. "Say again, Alpha SEAL Medic? Are you SEER qualified for this weather?" "Affirmative, Rescue 7. I have extensive experience with high-risk helicopter operations." What followed was a textbook tactical helicopter insertion that saved 4 lives. Sarah's guidance allowed the Coast Guard crew to complete a rescue that would have been aborted under normal protocols. Word of the incident spread quickly through the emergency services community. Captain Rodriguez, who had worked with Sarah on several missions since the construction site incident, started using the call sign regularly. Alpha SEAL Medic has tactical experience that makes her invaluable for high-risk operations, he told other emergency commanders. When conditions are too dangerous for regular medical personnel, she's our go-to specialist. The call sign stuck. Within weeks, emergency dispatchers throughout the region were using it. Sarah found herself being requested by name for situations that required both medical expertise and tactical capabilities. Police departments wanted her for high-risk warrant operations. Fire departments called her for technical rescues. Emergency management agencies requested her for disaster response deployments. Dr. Williams had been right about federal interest in Sarah's capabilities. 2 months after the school shooting incident, she received a visit from Agent Patricia Chen of the FBI's Crisis Response Team. "We've been following your work with local emergency services," Agent Chen explained during their meeting. "Your combination of medical training and tactical experience is exactly what we need for certain situations." "What kind of situations?" Sarah asked. "Hostage situations involving injured people. Terrorist incidents with mass casualties. Natural disasters in hostile environments. Times when regular medical personnel can't operate safely." Agent Chen offered Sarah a consultant position that would allow her to maintain her civilian career while being available for federal deployment when needed. The arrangement would provide additional training, federal credentials, and access to specialized equipment. Sarah accepted the position after discussing it with Dr. Williams and Captain Hayes. It represented a way to use her complete skill set while remaining primarily based in civilian emergency medicine. Her first federal deployment came sooner than expected. A domestic terrorist had taken hostages at a chemical plant outside the city, threatening to release toxic gases that would affect thousands of people. During the standoff, one of the hostages suffered a heart attack and needed immediate medical attention. The FBI tactical team couldn't reach the injured hostage without compromising their operational security. Regular paramedics couldn't work in the potentially contaminated environment. The situation required someone who could provide advanced cardiac care while operating in a tactical environment with chemical protection equipment. "Alpha SEAL Medic, this is FBI Command," came the radio call. "We need you on scene for a tactical medical operation." Sarah arrived at the incident command post to find a complex tactical situation. The terrorist had barricaded himself and 6 hostages in a control room overlooking the chemical processing facility. He claimed to have explosives and threatened to release chlorine gas if his demands weren't met. One of the hostages, a 54-year-old plant supervisor named Robert Chen, had suffered what appeared to be a major heart attack. Security cameras showed him unconscious on the floor while other hostages tried to help him. FBI Tactical Team Leader Agent Mark Stevens briefed Sarah on the situation. "We can't assault the position without risking civilian casualties and potential chemical release. We need someone who can reach Chen and provide medical care without compromising our tactical position." Sarah studied the facility layout and tactical situation. The approach would require moving through chemical processing areas while wearing full protective equipment, accessing the hostage location without being detected, treating a cardiac emergency with limited equipment, and evacuating the patient through a potentially contaminated environment. "I can do it," Sarah told Agent Stevens. "But I'll need specific equipment and a modified tactical approach." The operation took 4 hours to plan and execute. Sarah worked with the FBI tactical team to develop an approach route that would avoid detection while providing access to the hostage location. She selected medical equipment that would function effectively while wearing chemical protection gear. The insertion went exactly as planned. Sarah reached Robert Chen's location and found him in cardiac arrest. Working in full chemical protective equipment with limited space and lighting, she performed CPR and advanced cardiac life support procedures that stabilized his condition. The challenge became evacuating Chen without alerting the terrorist to the tactical team's presence. Sarah coordinated with FBI snipers to create a distraction while she moved Chen to a concealed evacuation point. The operation succeeded completely. Chen survived and recovered fully, while the tactical team maintained their operational security. Outstanding work, Alpha SEAL medic. Agent Stevens radioed as the evacuation was completed.
That was some of the best tactical medicine I've seen.
Word of Sarah's performance during the chemical plant incident reached the highest levels of federal emergency management. She began receiving deployment requests from across the country for situations requiring her unique combination of skills. A month later, she was deployed to assist with hurricane recovery operations in Florida when rescue teams discovered survivors trapped in a partially collapsed hospital. Standard rescue approaches were too dangerous because the building could collapse further, but the trapped medical staff and patients needed immediate care. Sarah rappelled into the damaged building with a special operations rescue team and established a field medical station in the unstable structure. Working by flashlight in dangerous conditions, she treated injured survivors and coordinated their evacuation over a 12-hour period.
"Control, this is Alpha SEAL medic," she radioed during the operation.
"I have 8 patients stabilized for evacuation.
Recommend continuing operations despite structural concerns.
These people won't survive if we wait for conventional rescue approaches."
Her assessment proved correct. All 8 survivors were successfully evacuated before the building suffered additional collapse.
Her willingness to work in extremely dangerous conditions had saved lives that would have been lost with standard rescue protocols.
The Florida operation established Sarah's reputation at the national level.
Emergency response agencies across the country began requesting her for their most challenging medical missions. She found herself deployed to earthquake zones, terrorist incidents, and natural disasters where regular medical personnel couldn't operate effectively.
Back at Metro General, Sarah's colleagues watched her transformation with amazement and pride.
Dr. Williams often received calls from other hospitals wanting to know how they could recruit someone with Sarah's capabilities. "There's only one Alpha SEAL medic," Dr. Williams would tell them.
"And we're lucky to have her."
The hospital had created a special position for Sarah that allowed her to respond to federal deployment requests while maintaining her role as lead medic for the regional emergency response team.
Her office was equipped with specialized communication equipment that kept her connected to federal emergency operations centers. Sarah's success had inspired changes throughout the regional emergency services community.
Police departments were recruiting military veterans with tactical medicine training.
Fire departments were expanding their technical rescue medical capabilities.
Emergency management agencies were developing new protocols for high-risk medical operations. Captain Rodriguez summed up Sarah's impact during a regional emergency services conference. "Alpha SEAL medic has shown us what's possible when you combine the highest levels of medical and tactical training. She's changed how we think about emergency medicine in dangerous environments." The recognition brought opportunities Sarah hadn't expected. She was invited to speak at medical conferences about tactical emergency medicine. Military medical training programs asked her to serve as an instructor. Emergency services agencies wanted her to help develop new protocols and training programs. But the work also brought personal challenges.
The constant deployment schedule was demanding.
The high-stress nature of her missions was emotionally draining. Most significantly, the public attention was making it difficult to maintain the private life she had sought when leaving military service. Sarah discussed these concerns with Captain Hayes during one of their regular check-in calls. "You've become something unique," Captain Hayes told her.
"There aren't many people who can do what you do.
The question is whether you're comfortable with the level of responsibility that brings."
"I want to help people," Sarah replied. "But sometimes I miss the anonymity of being just another nurse."
"That ship has sailed, Martinez.
You're Alpha SEAL medic now. The question is how you want to use that identity." Captain Hayes was right.
Sarah's reputation had grown beyond anything she had planned. Emergency responders throughout the country knew her call sign. Federal agencies had her on speed dial. News media had started following her story. A month after her conversation with Captain Hayes, Sarah received a call that would define the next phase of her career. A terrorist attack at a major airport had created a complex tactical and medical situation.
Multiple casualties were trapped in areas that were potentially booby-trapped. Regular medical personnel couldn't reach them safely. Alpha SEAL Medic, this is Federal Emergency Operations Center, came the call. We have a code red situation requiring immediate tactical medical deployment. How soon can you be airborne? Sarah looked at her packed deployment bag, always ready by the door.
She thought about the injured people who needed help, the tactical challenges that awaited, and the responsibility that came with being the person everyone called when regular approaches weren't sufficient. I can be airborne in 30 minutes, she replied. As Sarah gathered her equipment and prepared for deployment, she reflected on how far she had come from that first day as a nervous new nurse at Metro General. She had tried to hide her capabilities and live a quiet civilian life. Instead, she had become exactly what the emergency services community needed most, a highly skilled medical professional who could operate effectively in any environment. The airplane lifted off, carrying Sarah toward another high-stakes mission where lives would depend on her unique combination of medical expertise and tactical training. She was no longer trying to be an ordinary nurse. She was Alpha SEAL Medic, and that identity had become her calling. Looking out the airplane window at the city lights below, Sarah realized she had found something she hadn't been looking for when she left military service, a way to use her complete skill set to help people while building the kind of legacy she wanted to leave behind. The radio crackled with mission briefings and tactical updates. In a few hours, she would be working in another dangerous environment where her training and experience could make the difference between life and death. But, this time, instead of feeling conflicted about revealing her capabilities, she was proud to be exactly who she had become. Alpha SEAL Medic was heading to work.